I've got this press quality image that the web team has asked for, and they'd like to place it on our home page. They've asked me for a dimension of about 450 pixels wide, which will take up roughly about half of the web page. And we could check image and image size and dial it in here, but I don't want to risk harming the press quality image. So I'm going to hit Cancel, and I'll use File, Save for Web. Save for Web will allow me to do some testing and set the ideal size directly in this dialog. I'm going to make the dialog a little bit wider, and you'll notice the preview is very large. In fact, there are 4 tabs. Original shows the PSD, and when you hit Optimized, you could see a big color shift and in fact some dithering. Dithering is a pattern put in an image when colors don't exist in a web-safe color palette, specifically for the GIF image format. Now, I apologize if you're not a web designer and it will sound like I'm throwing a lot of acronyms out at you, but I just want you to take some of this in and do some experimentation with your own images. So if you look at the original versus the optimized, if I just hit Save at the bottom right now, it would save this out and I wouldn't really have the proper size or control over what I'm delivering. So let's see what our options are for web delivery. You can use 2-up to compare these side by side, and I'm on the hand tool and I can pull a different area into view, but I'm seeing a pretty severe shift here. In fact, if I want to test many different versions of this, I can hit 4-up and maybe bring the car into view because that's in the foreground. It's more of the focal point of the shot. And in the original, the hood is nice and smooth, but here I'm getting undesirable patterns in each. What this does is it gives me 4 areas, well really 3 areas to play with to get the ideal image. So before I even start, I'm going to go to Image Size and make the width 450, which the team has asked for. When I press Tab, it regenerates the preview, and now I could see most of the image fits in the preview window. So you'll notice I have no settings here on the right. That's because I'm still on the original. This area is provided for comparison. If I click the first GIF, and to let you know, GIF stands for Graphics Interchange Format, it was one of the 2 original formats we used for web images. GIF has a color table where you could do up to 256 colors, but with GIF, which is also pronounced GIF sometimes, GIF, out of those 256 colors, only has 216 which are blessed or considered web safe. So if I look at Web Snap over here, I could dial this up to 100%, and this is a palette only using the colors that exist out of those 216 that are guaranteed to look the same in all browsers and all platforms. GIF or GIF used to be required to do transparency or to limit the number of colors to make the file size smaller. If I lower the Web Snap and include more colors, you could see I'm at 72K. As I dial it up, I'm now at 31K because I'm only including 51 colors. When I dial it down to include all the possible colors, which may or may not be web safe, at 256 colors, I get a 73K file. But GIF is kind of dying out. We needed it for silhouettes if I just wanted to put the car on the web page and remove the background and have the web page background come directly up against the silhouette of the car, then I would have needed GIF and transparency. But this is a photo, and if I go to JPEGs, it's more common that GIF is used on logos or things of solid colors, so you could do few colors, and it makes a very small file size. JPEGs do 16 million colors. In fact, JPEG is called 24-bit color, and if you want to do the math, 2 to the 24th power is 16,777,216 colors. But all you need to know is JPEG doesn't limit you to any web-safe or particular colors. It is ideal for photographs. But the way JPEG makes a smaller file is to increase the lossy compression. So if I look at this, the quality is 60. Usually between 60 and 80 is the ideal number that you want for compression. And I'm looking at the car at 100%. Let's see how small I can get the file by using these other two testing areas. I'll click on the lower left car and choose JPEG and lower the quality to 40. In fact, I could just choose medium and that will lower it to 40. And I'll start to see some obvious signs of JPEG compression. These patterns where it's throwing away data to get the file size smaller. And I'm losing detail in the grille of the car. So my file size went from 37K down to 22. And in fact, if I click this last one and choose JPEG at low quality, you can really see the loss of detail, and especially in the bridge, you've got really bad patterning happening back there. So there's always a compromise between file size and quality to make a fast-loading image on a web page. And it gives you an estimate of how long it will take to download this image, but it's based on dial-up. I don't know many people still using dial-up to connect to the internet. My parents have already switched over to a higher speed connection like DSL or cable, and the American average today for internet connection is about 4.5 megabits per second. So 56K is 0.5 megabits per second. So we'll go to something faster, something that has cable or DSL, and anywhere between 384 and 512 is closer to the American average. I'll choose 512, so that really only takes 2 seconds to download, which isn't that long to wait for an image that takes up about half of your web page. But at my home, or home office, I actually have a cable connection, and I get about 25 to 35 megabits per second. So it's not going to be 2 seconds for me, so you want to pick something in the middle ground. Now, there is a third file format to choose, which is newer, and more people are moving towards that. Ping 8 or Ping 24. Ping 8 means 8-bit color or 256 colors, making a comparable image to a GIF where you can actually do silhouettes or transparency, and you can even animate. JPEGs can only be rectangular or square, and they cannot do transparency or silhouettes, and they cannot animate. But Ping 24, the one that does 24-bit colors, 16 million colors, can actually do all of what we needed GIFs for. It could do transparency, it could do animation, and I get the 16 million colors that I also got with a JPEG. But in this image, I have no need for those features, so I will click back on the JPEG, and that will be my ideal. If I am noticing a little bit of quality loss in the hood, I could try dialing the quality setting up to 70 or 80, and it will regenerate, and there, it's a smoother pattern. So somewhere between 60 and 80 is what you'll leave it on, and I'll hit Save down at the bottom, or hit Return or Enter, and I'll just go to the desktop, into my folder, and save. And now I've got a small web deliverable that I can pass on to my web team in the proper dimensions, the proper file format, and good quality. So that was my overview of Save for Web and the 3 primary formats you'd work with for web images. GIF, which is older these days but may produce a smaller file, ideal for large blocks of colors, logos, and things of that sort. JPEG's best for photographs when you don't need transparency or animation. And the newer Ping format, portable network graphic, if you want transparency and animation and higher color space. So let this information sink in, try saving a few of your own, and talk to the web team and ask what format they would prefer it in.